This is Learning to Dad
I'm the cool dad. That's my thing.
with Tyler Ross.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills.
I'm gonna have fun, and you're gonna have fun.
Hello and welcome to Learning to Dad. I am Tyler Ross and our guest today is Jesse Straight. Jesse, like me, is a born and raised Fauquier County boy, but unlike me, he is a University of Virginia graduate with studies in religion and pre-med. But his first job out of college was working for Habitat for Humanity. He was raised in a fairly typical suburban setting, but now he and his wife Liz operate the 82-acre Whiffletree Farm in Warrenton, Virginia, where you're celebrating your 10th anniversary in business. You're raising chickens, turkey, beef, pork, and more, all of which is done using methods consistent with being organic and humane. And Jesse and Liz have 7 children. And of the many people I know, fewer have a greater orientation towards living a life of service and faith, business, family, and flock than does Jesse.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here and interviewing with me. This is really cool.
Happy to be here, Tyler.
Yeah. So raising a kid, as we know, there are no metrics or measurements by which we can really gauge our success. But as we strive to be better people, husbands, and fathers, we will be better. And I think a big part of that is learning from others. So the people that I admire, the people I perceive to be high-level professionals, and people that are deliberate fathers, people that are critical thinkers, people that are positive and supportive. Because I think that you are those things, I feel like we'll get a lot of value out of this. And if for no one else does, I'm certain I will.
Great.
So again, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the kind words.
So just to start right off the bat, Whiffletree Farm. Can you paint a picture for people listening of what Whiffletree Farm is?
Yeah. Do you want just sort of the picture right now, or like the backstory, or?
Yeah, give me some history on it.
Okay.
Well, actually, let's paint what it is now and we'll back into it.
Sounds good. Yeah. So we raise and sell chicken, eggs, turkey, pork, and beef, like you mentioned before. It's 82 acres. We also now rent some additional acreage for our beef cattle. And just to give you some ideas on, what we do and how we do it. So in this last year, we raised about 10,000 meat chickens, and we keep about 2,000 laying hens. About 130 pigs a year. Our herd of cattle is about a little over 100 head, and we just finished up doing about 700 turkeys for Thanksgiving. And then in terms of who it is, it's obviously Liz and myself and the family. And then my right-hand man, Jonathan Elliott, who's VP, has been with me for now over 3 years. And then we generally have a part-time delivery driver, but we just hired a fella who was an intern this last year, and we just hired him on full-time. So he'll start in February. We're excited about that. So he'll be doing deliveries as well as helping manage operations on the farm. And then we have anywhere from 1 to 5 interns that are mostly with us in the spring to fall when we're busiest. And then we have a great crew of local high schoolers and community college students and otherwise adults who happen to be free on a Wednesday morning to help us with our poultry processing crew. And so that's from May to November, and a great group of people there. And then my mom and our friend Kathy Steckman are sort of our egg packers. So every Monday and Wednesday, they come out and keep the store and clean and pack our eggs. And
you do have retail on site.
That's right. Yeah, we have a little farm store on the farm. And so I'm just trying to make sure I'm not forgetting anyone. Lots of other people that help out, but that's the main people that makes up Whiffletree Farm and the animals. And then I guess, like you mentioned before, we're proud of our farming practices. So, everything's on fresh pasture, no antibiotics, no chemicals, no GMO grains, and our beef is 100% grass-fed. So we take a lot of pride in how we raise our animals.
Yeah, I think this is near and dear to my heart, as you know, because my mom owns the Natural Marketplace in Warrenton, organic health food store, grocery store. So you talk about interns and other things, and it just popped into my head this moment, the concept of using a farm such as yours as being an avenue of education for high schoolers and others for raising animals, and to think that it wasn't that long ago that was just the standard. That's just what people did. Everyone had chickens because how else do you get your eggs?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about how the lifestyle that you've chosen, and it's not that one you were born in,
Right.
that the lifestyle that you and your family live now, contrast that to kind of what the modern day is. So I'm excited to get into that at some point.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you have any thought right off the top of your head that pops
Yeah.
in?
So I guess you're kind of getting at, like, there's a certain work and activities that, obviously I'm thinking this is oriented towards our children, like,
Sure.
but I guess it might also be to these high schoolers and
Yeah,
young
just
adults.
farming as a business too. I mean, these days where it's not a lot, there's, I don't want to throw too much at you.
Yeah,
but
go for it.
You got huge corporate farmers that really create the economies of scale, and it's got to be so hard to compete with versus the kind of hyper local plus the lifestyle difference. So do with that what you will.
There's a lot there. Yeah. So I think, that is something that is an integral part of what we do is the education. With our internship, we want our interns to learn the easy way, not because, I had wanted to do an internship before I'd started, but we were married and had a baby already, and that didn't really allow for that. So I know personally, I made all kinds of expensive and frustrating mistakes because I was learning as I went. And so I want like our interns to really cheat the learning curve and bypass all those expensive and frustrating mistakes I made. Of course, you can't bypass them all, but a lot of them. And set them up both in their education and then as well as like an ongoing consultant for them that they can, help them launch. So that is an important part. And yeah, I think too, like with our processing crew, we've had, people that have started out when they were 12 and 13 help processing with us until they're 20. And we really, we're not claiming credit for their maturation, but like, I don't think their parents would say that it wasn't like a part of what happened, that they like, we have really high standards. Like we want really good behavior and really good work. And we're really proud of what we do. And I think that rubs off so they feel proud about, what they're accomplishing with us. And they see, like, to what standard they can get, like someone holds them to a standard and they know like, hey, I can work really hard. I can get really good at something and I'm really appreciated and I'm doing something I'm proud of. So that is nice to be a part of that. And then I guess as it pertains to our children, we can maybe get into that more if you want, but that's definitely, something that was attractive to me about farming was how it's so easy to integrate your family, at least this model of farming, to integrate your family into it and have, my children understand my work and be with me in my work and that I can teach them how to work and how to work in general. And of course, what we're doing obviously in particular. And I can, take opportunities to compliment them when they do good work and show them, oh, well, when we're, when we need to work quick, like this is what it means to work quick. If we're in a hurry, this is how you turn up the volume, or like, this is an important mistake not to make. That one, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, so you can kind of teach them. And I think that's, really valuable. And it's, I think will, hopefully give us a connection with each other, my kids and myself that, I feel really fortunate to have. I know that like a lot of fathers don't get that privilege of, working alongside their kids a lot. I really feel fortunate about that.
Yeah, I want to expand on that a little bit because what I do, I'm, real estate, building, all these things. Like I'd love, and I get the benefit, like you say, of working with my dad, which is the greatest. And I hope that my kids want to do something with me, collaborate in some way. Yeah. But I don't know because at 4 years old, my daughter's not going to write a real estate contract or, do a layout for a development or be able to pound nails on a construction site. Yeah. Whereas your children, what's the youngest that I'm going to do air bunny quotes, put them to work. Yeah. At what point have you gotten them involved in the activities of the farm?
Sure. So it's very gradual and I hate to use the word organic, but
we'll use it a lot, probably.
Trying to avoid that. So, for example, like I need to make deliveries to a restaurant. I'll bring even my 2-year-old with me. They're not doing work, but they get to be with me and they think it's fun, and they get to see, me providing food to people and the people appreciating that, and they get to be, oh, look at how cute you are, and oh, you're helping your daddy, and all those fun things. So, it just starts out by being with me. And then as they get older, they want to help me, and so we've started this tradition where we have what we call the special work day. Yeah. So with our four oldest kids, so what happens is the night before they lay out their clothes, and then I'll wake them up early the next morning, and then they'll get dressed and come out with me to do the morning chores, and we start the chores at 6 a.m. So they'll come out with me, and we'll go open the hens' nest boxes and feed the hens, and then we'll go over and move the meat chickens to fresh pasture. We'll go check on the pigs. We'll move the cows. And so, and when they're really young, say like, they're 4 or something, again, they're mostly just coming with me, and they might be picking flowers while I'm moving the shelter, or they might be on top of the shelter while I'm moving the shelter.
Going for a ride.
Yeah. And I try and, make it fun. I try and am intentional about, telling jokes, telling stories, teasing them, and pointing, and, without being too heavy-handed, I like to point out, like, isn't it such a beautiful morning? Look at the spider webs in the dewy grass, or like, look at how the chickens love it when I move them to fresh pasture. Isn't that so cool? Yeah. And I try and point out the things that, get me excited about my work. Because again, some people joke like, oh man, you got 7 kids. You're really going to put them to work, aren't you? And get a bunch of free labor. And, I know, you can. They
don't have kids. They know it's not free.
Well, yeah. Well, that's true too. But I mean, like, that's a fine joke to make. But sure. That aside, like, I really don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. My end game, like what you mentioned, is I want my kids to love the farm, and I want them to love being with me and Liz. Yeah. And that won't happen if they are used as slave labor. Right. You know what I mean? And how the cliched story is, I grew up on a farm and I couldn't get off it soon enough. Sure. Right. Because probably in a lot of ways, who knows? But some of the reasons could be they were used as slaves. I mean, that's a little extreme. They were used as cheap labor, right. Or maybe the farm was aesthetically or aromatically not pleasing, So those are also goals of ours, that like we want to farm in such a way that it's pleasing to all the senses. And that's how things work in nature. You don't have, big manure piles in nature, right? The animals spread it out and it gets used by the soil. So yeah, so basically, I don't want to go down that path, and I would feel like, one of my big goals in life, I would have failed if my kids resent me because of their work on the farm. And this is something I have taken from this farmer, Joel Saladin at Polyface Farm, who's kind of the guru of our field of sustainable animal farming. And I really respect him for this. And he said he would rather, at the end of the day, err on the side of paying his children too much, because who cares if you have a little less money, but if your kids love to be with you and to work with you, and they have an affection for the farm and the work, how could you what is that worth? And of course, like, I have no expectation that like all my kids are gonna love farming, they're all gonna want to live in Warrenton, and but I'm going to do whatever I can in my power to woo them and to make that attractive. And of course, if they decide another path, so be it. But I'm going to do whatever I can to say, hey, isn't this really cool? Hey, we can like make some really cool opportunities for you here, and like, don't you really enjoy this work? And don't you see how like good it is? Whatever ways that I can point out what I think are the true goods of the work and the life, and the chips will fall where they will.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said provide them the opportunity. I think a lot of folks try to, steer their kids one direction or another, which we all, I think, naturally want, because we want our kids to be a particular way. But I think the most important thing is giving them the opportunity to exercise their own discretion. But if we can give them opportunities as parents, right? They say, the kid's the arrow and we're the bow, so point it in the right direction. You got to let go at some point. Yeah. But farming, I'm going to assume, without any personal experience, that is such a lifestyle choice relative to somebody getting a job or even a career. And then on top of that, having 7 children is a lifestyle choice. Right. So, tell me what a day is like. Tell me what your hours are as
Sure.
a professional farmer.
Yeah. So typically I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and I try and do whatever planning for the day and the week that I was too tired to do the night before between 4:30 and 6. And then we go out to do chores, the morning chores. And when I say that just generally means like taking care of the animals, which means moving them to fresh pasture and giving them feed and water and all the essential things for a healthy life. So we get that done, and depending on the time of year, sometime between 8 and 10 or something. And so then at that point, most mornings I then, like I said, there might be 4 days a week where the oldest 4 kids are with me, and then we'll come back to the house and we'll have breakfast at the house. So I get to, eat breakfast with the family, and then, go back out. And the rest of the day, kind of between the morning chores and afternoon chores, is sort of like when all the miscellaneous things happen, whether that's putting together orders for restaurants or helping customers in the store or taking animals to the slaughterhouse or, fixing up infrastructure, all those kinds of things. And then again, we have the afternoon chores. And again, that's, now we're gathering eggs, feeding the hens again, feeding the chickens again, moving the cattle to fresh grass, all those kinds of things. And then, I'd say probably about maybe 30 or 40% of the time I eat lunch. So that's just kind of how I am. Like I just kind of get going and I'll, eat a big dinner. But if I do have lunch, I'll come back to the house and be with the kids. And it's not unusual, where, after breakfast, I'll be able to sit down and read a kid a book for a second and go back out. And then I try and finish up at 5:30, come back to the house, dinner and all the nighttime stuff, bed, pajamas and baths and books and all that sort of stuff, dishes. And then, it's pretty typical that then I'll kind of get back to work, I don't know, maybe around 8:30 after all the kids are in bed. And I might, work for an hour or so. And then, off to bed. Yeah.
That is a day.
So, yeah. And, I work more than I'd like to at this point. And that's something that, I have been like making progress with.
Sure.
But, especially starting up, it was, pretty intense. And I'm really grateful to Liz because she certainly has picked up the slack when, I had to put in some really long hours to get things going. But, it seems like we're going in the right direction, like I used to work 7 days a week and now I kind of work 5.5 days a week. And, and I used to work a lot later in the night, and now I go to bed a more decent hour. And so I guess the other thing and related to sort of parenting that we've started up in the last, I don't know, maybe a year or so is, so we have the special chore day in the morning.
Yep.
And then in the evening we have a special reading day. And so then each of the kids has a night of the week where then I take them aside and for an hour we'll make a nice fizzy drink and, maybe get a little snack and we'll go off by ourselves and we have a book that we're reading through together. And so that's another nice opportunity where I can have like one-on-one time with each of the kids that, and that I guess that would be for the 5 oldest kids that I do that with. And that's, I think sometimes Liz, she likes that I do that, but I mean, sometimes I'm like, this is awesome. I get to go read a story for an hour and like, she's like, I'm over here, like, taking care of the little ones.
And 6 over here.
Yeah. And they're like having a fight and, the dishes aren't getting done, so, I mean, that's really fun.
I'd love to hear you expand on that kind of routine between you and Liz, husband and wife, as parents of 7 children.
Yeah.
How do you manage a household like that? And in that question, I hope that you'll tell us how old all your kids are.
Sure.
So we got some perspective on like, to any parent who's thinking about, like, we have 2.
Yeah.
So we can play man-to-man defense.
Yeah.
We can play man-to-man offense.
Yeah.
But 7, like, what was it like graduating along the way from 1 to 7? And then, what's that kind of divide and conquer among you and Liz?
Yeah. So, it's really interesting. We've really found that our like most strenuous or difficult times was when we had less kids and they were all young. So right now, Josephine's 10, and then it goes down from Josephine, Roberta, and they're all about 2 years apart.
Okay.
So Josephine, Roberta, Leon, Souther, Ann, Jonah, Lucy, and Xavier. And Xavier was born in June, so he's about 5 months old.
Yeah.
So it goes from 10 to 5 months old. Yeah, and I if Liz was here, I bet she would say that, when she had 3 or 4 little kids, that was maybe the toughest. And there's a number of reasons, obviously, Josephine and Roberta and Leon, they're older now, and they, on one hand, they are really helpful, like they want to hold the baby, and, they can go grab this thing Liz needs real quick to, whatever.
Right.
So they're very helpful. The other interesting thing that we hadn't really thought through was, when Josephine was just Josephine, and she's not only looking to us for all of her needs, but she's also looking to us for all of her stimulation. And now these later kids, there's so much activity in the house that sometimes they could care less about us, the parents, because all the fun, exciting things their siblings are doing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, they just want to like keep up with the crowd, So like, of course, like sometimes they want to sit on our lap and us to hold them and all that stuff. But sometimes they're just like, where are the kids? I want to be with them. That's where the action is. So that was like an insight as our families developed. And yeah, so I guess the other part of your question was in terms of Liz and me and how like the breakdown, how everything gets done and that kind of stuff.
You put in a long day, and I'm sure she does also.
Yes,
and
yeah.
Just like, I believe moms have superpowers.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure I'm about to hear about some of Liz's
Yeah.
superpowers, but I mean, just 2,
Right.
but 7.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Liz is a very hard worker, and I think also it's just necessity has meant more planning. So really having an idea of not winging meals, or like having a real solid meal plan, and having systems where it's usually like me and 1 or 2 other kids does the dishes every night. Things that before, when it's less intense, you can just kind of make it up as you go along, and just probably a little bit more planning. And then of course, like I said, our older kids are helping out more now. And yeah, so I guess, do you want me to run through like a typical day with like kind of how Liz and I manage everything, or?
Well, for the benefit of anyone who might have more than 2,
Okay, yeah.
I'd be interested just in any of the high points and low points of what's really easy and what's really difficult.
Yeah.
Like, that might be different than expectations.
Yeah. So high points and low points in terms of like maybe what's a difficult part of the day, or
what's something that was when you said, all right, here comes this 3rd kid, 4th, 5th,
right,
like
yeah.
what's a challenge that you didn't expect?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess, the challenges that have come along have been, like we were talking about before, where there seems like there's always one kid who needs a lot of attention at that moment. So, whether they're just acting really defiant or really testing boundaries, just like, oh man, your plans for the day are shot because this kid just really doesn't want to empty the dishwasher, and then you're going to have like an hour-and-a-half battle about, you need to do your job or whatever it is, So those are difficult, and those are the times that I think are really wearying, and like where Liz will kind of call me in for backup, like, I don't care what you're doing right now, I need you at the house.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like that just kids go through different phases where they need to see if you really mean what you say, or, like really the rules do apply to them or not, So that's something that can be really test us. The other thing that's really hard with a big family is sickness. Like, you know what I mean? Like if everyone gets, the stomach bug, oh man, it's like a war zone, like it just like, just waiting for the next one to fall. And that is a real challenge. And I think that's another thing that will just like kind of zap Liz, like, oh no, here we go. It's one thing to like, be like, okay, well, our 2 kids are going to get sick. It's like, oh no, like we're going to be dealing with this for 2 or 3 weeks, So that's a challenge. And then also Liz homeschools.
That's my next question.
Okay, yeah. So, as the kids are getting older and she's homeschooling more and more kids, that's also more of a challenge. And
did any of them go to public school or private school at any time, or has it been homeschooled?
Homeschooled, yeah. So Josephine's in 5th grade, and she was started from the beginning.
And Liz does it.
Yeah, Liz does it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that's, and that's something I was like, how's this going to work when, like, right now there's 4 that are doing school, how's this going to work when there's more than that? So, we'll have to figure that out as we go along. But yeah, so yeah. And then I guess, my MO is I try and, take as much of the load as I can when I'm around. So, when I come back for meals, I try and, like, say if there's that one kid that really needs a lot of attention right now, like, that's the one I'm going to be like, hey, come with me on the deliveries, or, come to the farm store with me, or, let me read you a story after breakfast, anything I can do to kind of lighten the load for Liz. And then, when I come home, the same thing there, whatever in the evening, whenever I can do. And then likewise, for the day and a half off, I usually have, that's a chance to, like, give Liz a break. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing that, like, Liz has found that's really helpful for her is just kind of keeping a quote unquote nap time, so that she can just get away for a second, even if she's not taking a nap. So, the older kids can do something quietly, read a book, whatever, for a couple hours. The younger kids take a nap, and Liz can just go away and kind of be like, all right, I need to just refresh for a second, whether she's, taking a nap herself or, just working on something in her own space. So I think that's going to help keep sanity.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I want to ask you a little bit more about homeschooling, because I'm struggling with how to educate my kids. They're 3 and 4, so they go to a kind of a small private school right now, which is amazing. They love them so much.
Yeah.
There. But at some point, private school, at least around here, has gotten so absorbently expensive.
Right.
The value add, I have a hard time getting my head wrapped around.
Yeah.
And public school, it's like, if you want your kids to be anything other than ordinary, you have to do something that's not ordinary.
Right.
And homeschooling is not ordinary.
Right.
And what's homeschooling look like? How do you feel about it? Just
Sure.
generally for anyone thinking about it, for me.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone listening thinks. I want to know.
Yeah. Well, so, Liz's background was conventional public schooling, and she grew up in the suburbs.
My wife's too.
Okay. Yeah. She grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia and went to really good public schools and had a good experience and loved school and did well in school and all that. So there's, that's her background. My background's all over the place, where I was homeschooled some, I went to private school, and I eventually, graduated from public high school. And yeah, so I, kind of have a bit of everything from my experience. Yeah, I guess, I have some thoughts about homeschooling. One is, like, I feel really fortunate that Liz wants to homeschool and that she's doing it in our context, because I know that, like, a large downfall of homeschooling is the lack of social life.
Right.
So, like, I could see there's just a lot of things going for us in that regard. One is that, like, I'm around, so there's some extra social life, and I incorporate the kids into my social/business life.
Right.
So, like, they get to bop around with me and talk to customers and go to restaurants and, interact with interns and colleagues, and, so there's kind of there's a lot going on, so it's not like that sleepy suburban home in the cul-de-sac where, like, all the kids are off at school and there's one parent at home, and otherwise it's just kind of a dead zone socially, and of course, and now that's painting a pretty bleak picture, because there's lots of, nice homeschool co-ops and all kinds of things that are really kind of growing more recently. But then also, just so there's one sort of, like, the social aspect of the farm, and also too, like, the kids have this huge playground where, they, again, they might not feel as trapped as they would in, like, say, a suburban context, where, like, they can romp around, go down to the stream and go swimming and go trek through the woods, go play with the animals. So, like, there's kind of a lot of interesting things going on that way, which is nice. And then I guess too, the other thing I would say is, homeschooling where there's 7 kids that are all generally, like, a couple years apart, means that they have built-in friends. So, they just, like, have a lot of fun with each other, and they, consider each other to be their best friends. And so, that's another nice thing. Whereas if, we had a couple kids that were 4 or 5 years apart, that just is a different social scene. And so that's another thing. And these are not things that we like really planned out, you know.
Yeah.
We're just more like figuring out as we go along. But that's like, oh, that's really nice that's that way. So yeah, and I guess, you know, I share some of your thoughts. You know, private school is really expensive. And also, you know, in both private and public school, also, you know, they do add sort of like, I don't know how to say it, but they add work to your day too. Like you're not just like getting off, you know, like, oh, I just outsourced that. Now I'm, you know, like that does not how it works. Like kids come home with homework. You're helping them learn things. You're schlepping them back and forth to school and activities. So all of a sudden, like, you know, you can feel like, yeah, your day is filled with a lot of these things. So that's a really nice thing about homeschooling too, is just the kind of peaceful family life that allows for, where like the kids aren't doing homework at night. Like we're reading stories and we're hanging out, and we're not just like the rat race of like driving kids around and little kids just hanging out in a minivan all day. Like that's not happening, you know? So I think we feel really fortunate that we're, you know, not having to do some of those things. But, you know, of course our concern is like, are kids happy? Or also like, will later on in their adulthood, would they resent us? Like, I wanted to go to school and, you know, you like forced me to stay home or something like that, you know? Sure. So like, those are things that are in mind that we, you know, we're trying to constantly talk to our kids and like, hey, you know, these people that go to school, like, do you think you want to go to school? Or, you know, what are your thoughts about that? Are you, you know, what would you be happy about? What would you be sad about? You know? So we want to be, you know, we want to be really careful that we, I don't know, don't have that like for whatever agenda we do have, that we're really careful to listen to our kids and be sensitive to making changes that we need to.
I mean, this is kind of a hard segue, but in your lifestyle with the kids and more farmer lifestyle, do you reject like devices like iPads and phones and television? Like, do you have that at all, or do you try to minimize it? Like, what's your approach?
Yeah, so we don't have a television at home, and you know, none of the kids have any devices, any, you know, phones or tablets or anything. So, you know, we don't have anything like that. I mean, I have like a smartphone and a computer. So that is part of the home because I'm doing work with it. So it's not like they don't know what those are, but they don't use them at this point or really, you know, play with them or things like that.
Do you see a difference between kids you know that have access to those things, basically unfettered access, versus your kids? You find that like your kids are more present or more in tune with nature or anything, or like these other kids are zombies? I feel like my kids, we try to limit it, but you know, we go out to eat and they won't behave.
Right.
It's a really great shortcut to just sit there quietly for 45 minutes. I have guilt with that. And I just, what's it like to be so guilt-free?
Well, I'm not here judging you, so don't worry about it. Yeah, so I don't know. You know, I don't, you know, our kids are so young at this point. I think that's going to be something we come across more later on when it's just more normal for older children to have all their own devices unfettered. You know, at this point, most of the families we're interacting with, you know, their 10 and 8 and 6-year-old aren't just like, you know, whiling away hours on some device without any restrictions. So I think our kids would think that was like weird. Like, what are you doing? Don't you want to like, I mean, that's not true. Of course, they're like any human being, they're attracted to bright, shiny colors. So, so I guess to answer your question, I just don't think I've seen a lot of children that are the peers of our children that are in that situation where they're just really like glued to the device. And maybe that speaks to like the crowds we run in, but for whatever, that's the answer.
Okay. Well, I want to get into some more kind of, we'll have like a lightning round at the end, but I want to get into some kind of short answer stuff. And I'm going to start with what I expect to be this is going to be my last long answer question. So something that I haven't had to do with my kids yet is really explain to them what death is about. Like, we had a cat that died a couple years ago, but they were too young. We have a dog that's going to die, and I'm going to have to explain that to them. We have family members, friends. It's just inevitable. Whereas on a farm, it's a daily part of that operation. and I wonder what that conversation's like with your kids.
Yeah.
If you recall that particular moment where like, I got to explain what the circle of life is to my kids.
Yeah.
And then that, the value of life and those
Right.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think maybe go at this in a couple ways. So sadly, Liz's mother passed away from a brain tumor. It's now about 5 years ago. And so some of our older kids, were aware and went through that. And so, that was, the closest person to them that, that they had to go through her passing. So we had to deal with, questions and all that kind of stuff then with the older children. And then, like you say, death is a part of the farm life.
Right.
And but I guess we kind of talk about our approach to the animals from start to finish, not just when it comes, like, say, if I'm, slaughtering the chickens, that's not the first time I'm talking about, how we ought to approach and respect animals and be grateful for their lives and what they're providing us. So, I, say I'm, I don't know if this is getting too real, but I'm slaughtering some chickens, and one of my younger children comes up and they're like, "Oh, that's so sad." I'll be like, "You're right. It is sad. It's not pretty when, like, an animal has to die." And the reason I'm doing it this way is because I respect the animal and I'm grateful to the animal for what the animal's providing. And I kind of try and take those opportunities to teach our children why we do what we do and how we are trying to have an attitude of gratefulness and respect. I will say that, maybe even more so than death, mating and reproduction comes up at an earlier age.
I haven't gotten that far yet. Enlighten me.
Yeah.
Me.
So anyway, I don't know if Liz read this or someone told her this, but it was wise. It was only answer the question the child is asking. It's very tempting to, like, a child will be like, "Why is that one cow jumping on the back of the other cow?" And you can be like, "All right, here we go. We're going to talk about everything." No, you can just say, like, you just answer the immediate, like,
trying to get in better position.
Yeah, or like, that's what happens in nature is sometimes animals do that. And if they, like, ask another question, well, why do they do that? But a lot of times, a 3-year-old's going to be like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then when they become, a 7-year-old, they might say, "Oh, well, why do they do that?" And then you answer that question. But, anyway, that was wise advice, I feel like. But anyway, that more than death, I feel like mating and reproduction are more the kind of the buggers, like, "Oh, wait a second, how do I give an age appropriate answer here?" And so anyway, I suspect that, like, our children will understand things about the birds and the bees maybe sooner than some. They'll come at it pretty naturally.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about being with your kids on the farm and trying to give them the opportunity to be present and enjoy the spider webs and enjoy the grass and the dew and these things. Now, what about the flip side of that when you have to punish I'm gonna use the word punishment for lack of a better term coming to my head, but when they need to be corralled, I think I've said it before, but you ever go bowling and they've got the inflatable tubes down the side? I feel like we just got to stay in the lane. Like, how are you the bumper? Like, what do you do when your kids are being defiant?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you, what works for you?
Yeah, sure. So, I've seen lots of different things work for parents. And I'd say probably the couple things that come to mind the most are modeling for the children, good behavior and virtue. And, so I think that's really important. Like that, like you yourself as a parent are really trying to be, a really good person and show by example to your children something to aspire to. And, that's obviously easier said than done.
Yeah, we're human.
Yeah, right. So I think that's one thing. And then I think another important thing is to really, these are kind of like fundamental, like, things that, allow for discipline or the possibility of discipline, is to really show your children your goodwill for them and that you like really want the best for them.
Yeah.
And I think that can happen in a lot of different ways. Obviously like lots of nice personal attention, reading stories and playing with them. And I think that really communicates to them that, you're not some tyrant that just like has to have things your way and don't bug me, but that, you really care about them and want their best. So I think like when children really are confident that you want their best and they really respect you, that like you are a good person, then I think those are like pretty like, got to have those in place, before anything else can happen. And then I think, whatever form of discipline, I feel like it's just important that it's consistent. That like, when you say, here are the boundaries and here are the consequences, that you basically don't wimp out, that like, because again, your kids want you, they're rooting for you to be a good person. They want you to be a perfect dad, and part of that means keeping your word and being reliable. And, so like, if you're not reliable to keep your word when you say, here are the boundaries and here are the consequences, then that can really shake their confidence in, well, are you going to be reliable in other areas?
That's
like,
a really interesting
like
point.
If you won't keep your word here, when you say you're going to protect me and care for me, and you say you're going to, whatever, do these nice things for me, like, are you really? Because you just didn't keep your word here. And so I think like in an interesting way, just being consistent is a way of really comforting a child and letting them know like this world, like they'll grow up and they'll learn about how screwed up the world is.
Yeah.
But like the world that we're providing for you is something you can trust and you can relax. You can be at peace, because like when I say something's going to happen, it is going to happen, and I'm going to create this like secure place for you to flourish. And don't worry about all those nasty things that are going to come across when you're an adult. Like we're going to hopefully build your character up such that you have the courage and the virtue to handle that when the time comes. But right now, like just enjoy these relationships and these experiences. Yeah, so I think those are some of the things that stand out to me. It's just consistency and keeping your word. And when some of these phases that come through with children that are going through like a defiant period, they have to get a lot of negative attention because they're butting up and they're saying like, are you serious? Are you serious? Is this really a rule? Is this really a rule? And of course, so they'll need discipline to say, yes, this is the rule and here's the consequence. And so I found that it's really important in those situations to then give them lots of positive attention, because like that would be such a downer if the majority of your interactions with your dad that day were negative and were like, you did the wrong thing, so here's the consequence. So I always try and basically like, if that's a situation, I try and compensate with, okay, after the discipline, let's like wrestle and tickle and have a fun time, and like just communicate through these nonverbal ways like, hey, everything's all right now. Like we're past that. That incident happened. I don't think you're a bad person. I'm just marking that behavior is not acceptable. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that like you're a bad kid, like, no, that I just taught you a lesson. And now I hope you learn that lesson, but we'll do this again. But like also right now, we're gonna have a lot of fun and like wrestle and tickle and that shows the kids like, I'm not holding resentment. Yeah. I'm not angry. This is a very unemotional thing in the sense of like negative emotions, like I'm so angry at you, So I think, compensating within lots of positive attention for kids in that phase has really borne out that's like really important to, remind them like, I love you, I care for you, I want your best. And no matter, how many times you disobey me or do something that's not right, like I'm not going to resent you. I'm not going to be angry. And we're moving on. Clean slate.
It's incredibly powerful. You like moved me during that description. I appreciate that a lot. I'm going to take a lot out of that. Yeah, really, really great.
Yeah. And I think that's one other thing on that is just like, I think it's so important to try and, when necessary, discipline children in an unemotional way.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Just calm, like this is matter of fact, like I want our children to learn the consequences of bad behavior now when the stakes are really low. Yeah. Like I want them to learn that it's really bad to lie to me now and not learn when they're an adult and they're cheating on their taxes and they're going to jail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stakes are a lot higher, you know? So that's one thing. It's like just keeping it really unemotional, and that like this isn't a personal thing. This is not like I don't like you anymore. This is just I need to teach you a lesson so that you'll be happier when you're older. And I try and communicate to the kids like, you know what, like what I'm trying to do here is make you happy. That's what I'm trying to do. And to be happy, like you need to learn some of these lessons. And there was something else I was thinking in there, but I forget the other thing. But anyway, yeah.
Well, you talk about not being an emotional response. It immediately made me think about my wife, who says, you know, managing a classroom of kindergarten and first graders.
Yeah.
Says the second you raise your voice is the second every one of those kids know that you don't have control anymore.
Yeah, right.
And I found that in order to not have an emotional response requires patience. And I believe that I've been conditioned to be quite patient.
Yeah.
However, it gets pressed. And I have practices that, you know, whether it's counting in my head, or taking a deep breath, or just having a mindful meditation regularly, which I wish I had. But is there anything in particular that you do to exercise or cultivate patience in yourself to be a better parent that somebody else might be able to do?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'll try and come back to that question. There's one other thing I was thinking about
Yeah,
that
you got it.
helpful. Yeah. And that thing is sometimes as a parent, it's really easy to discipline your children for your own sake, whether that's because, you know, you just really like enjoy that authority and you're like, I'm going to put you in your place, you know, and not for their good. Or it might be like embarrassment, like, oh, you just embarrassed me in front of all these people. Like, I'm so angry with you for embarrassing me, you know. So those are like really like common, easy to, you know, feelings easy to have.
Again.
Yeah. And so I think like that's a really important thing is just try and remember like I need to put my child's good first. And this isn't about like I'm really want to move on with my day and get my list of tasks done and you're getting in the way of that. And it's not about like you're making me look bad. You know, it's about what is best for my child and how do I like try and come back to focusing on that despite all these feelings of like rage because the day's been ruined and I look like a fool and whatever else, you know.
Yeah, how do you get to that place?
Yeah, I mean, you make lots of mistakes and you don't.
Yeah.
But I think, and that brings up another good point, is like, I think it's really, like, maybe one of the things I think is most important is like, I think it's really important to be in the habit of asking for your children's forgiveness.
It's really nice.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, as parents, we should aspire to be perfect parents.
Yeah.
And of course, we're not going to be.
Right.
So we should just, you know, from the gate, just admit that's going to be the truth, right? And if that's the case, then we should all from the gate and just have a plan and a habit of asking for forgiveness. And that's a good thing in itself, you know, like that should be done just because it should be done. But also, how much might that save relationships? You know, for example, like the if I'm in the habit of, you know what, Roberta, like I was hungry and I was impatient and I shouldn't have like barked out, you know, that like command or whatever it was, you know, will you please forgive me? That, you know, I've seen in my kids how much they appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, they, I think, relish those things. And I think they also think it's kind of funny that I'm asking for their forgiveness, you know, but they really relish it. In fact, there's this one story with Leon. So Leon is 7 now. At the time, he was probably 5 or 6. Actually, the same thing happened where we were eating a meal. Roberta did something that was frustrating. I forget what it was. I was probably stressed out about something. And I remember I just like spoke harshly to her. And I was like, you know, so then like whatever, you know, a minute later, I'm like, you know, Roberta, I really shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Will you please forgive me for speaking to you like that? And you know, and kids, like I said, kids are so rooting for you at this age, you know, they're like, oh, sure. Yeah, no worries, you know? And Leon, you know, was like, he said to me, he says, Papa, I really like it when you ask us to forgive you. And I was like, you know, he stopped there, and I was like, oh man, this is juicy. I want to hear what I want to keep talking, you know. So then I was like, oh really, Leon? Why do you really like it when I ask forgiveness of you guys? And he says like, I don't know, it just makes me feel warm inside.
How amazing.
Yeah.
How amazing.
Yeah. So, you know, so anyway, but back to the point, which is like, we're all going to make mistakes. But, how many adult children resent their parents?
Yeah.
And how many would if their parents regularly asked for their forgiveness? I mean, of course, like, a parent that continues to make the same habitual act of some kind of violence against their children,
Right.
That's a hard one to stomach. But a parent who really authentically, wishes for their child's good, and because they're human, makes mistakes and does things that annoy their children, or does things to, unwittingly hurt their children, how much sympathy would be engendered, if that parent just was regularly asked for forgiveness. And then that would also really make it clear to the child that there's an open invitation for feedback.
Yeah.
Like parents who never ask for forgiveness and essentially are saying, don't talk to me about things you don't like.
Right.
Because we don't go there.
Yeah.
And if a kid feels open to be like, you know what, my dad always asks me for forgiveness when he thinks of something he did wrong, it's going to be totally fine if I go to him and say, when you did that thing in front of my friends and you made that joke, like that hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
They'll feel really comfortable doing that if that's just a regular part of life. And so what could be something they just resent and are annoyed with and all that, could like come out to the open and be an opportunity for, oh, I'm so sorry. You're totally right. That was mean of me and stupid, and I'll really try not to do that. And let me know in the future if I do it again, I'm going to try hard not to do that, So, but you were saying,
I want to stay right on this.
Okay.
I think this is amazing.
Yeah.
I just finished reading Lewis House's book called The Mask of Masculinity, where he talks about all these masks that men wear to protect themselves, to keep from being vulnerable.
Right.
And I think that's such a beautiful way to be vulnerable to your children.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would look at vulnerability as being the willingness to try something, knowing that failure is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So that vulnerability, like you say, gives kids permission to try,
Mm-hmm.
to come and speak to you,
Yeah.
because they have confidence that even if their try is a failure,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
Because Papa's going to respond in a way that is not dangerous.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So the fear isn't there
Mm-hmm.
for your child to communicate with.
Yeah.
I thought I was moved before, but that is totally resonating with me, and I
Yeah.
hope that a lot of people feel the same way that listen to this, because the importance of conditioning children to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
the world beats it out of them at probably 4 or 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
And so if they can stay vulnerable, it means they'll be
Mm-hmm.
willing to take risks, which means they'll be able to do really amazing things.
Yeah.
So
And that comes back to like we were saying about before, where like if you as a parent keep your word about what the boundaries are,
Yeah.
that creates a security where, a kid knows that a kid has a certain level of inner peace, I feel like, where, they know they know they're standing on solid ground, and they know what's what, and likewise. And I think ways that we as parents can provide, stability for our children is really freeing to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So, yeah, let's ask that question real quick,
Yeah.
and then I want to go lightning round.
Okay.
Like, is there anything that you do to cultivate patience in your life for the benefit of your business and your family?
Yeah, let me think about it. I think one sort of like step back from that is, your background. So, I'm one of 6 and, used to a house full and chaos and not everything in the right place and, things like that. Whereas Liz has 2 younger sisters, and, she, her house was, less chaotic than mine. So it really comes, like, I feel like I have an easier go of it sometimes because that's like normal for me.
Right.
And so things that might upset Liz, I don't even see or hear. So there's some bit of it which is just sort of like background and how, what bothers you, in terms of like when something actually does bother me, or get to me, I don't think I have really anything great in the moment.
Yeah.
There's no particular method except those things I said before, which were just to really try and remember what's the point here in terms of like, the point here is the child's good. It's not so that I can move on with my day and get my listed tasks done. And I think also just to be regularly reflective of what is the priority here in terms of like, will I consider my life a success if my business is a little better organized? Mm-hmm. Or will I consider it a failure if my children resent not having attention from me? So just trying to keep those kinds of questions in the forefront of my mind so, when I'm interrupted in work, I'm not just like, oh, would you leave me alone?
Yeah, sure.
So just try to remember, like, wait a second, what's my main job here?
Yeah.
And then I think, in a more sort of like foundational level, I would say my Catholic faith is a part of, my path of trying to get things right and trying to, be a better person just in general, but also for my kids. So, I think that, whatever, all the sort of riches of the Catholic faith in terms of prayer and going to confession and going to mass, those are all things that I feel like contribute to helping me become the person I was intended to be, and also, helping me turn the boat around when things have gone badly. Yeah, but I guess probably no great sort of in the heat of the moment method or anything. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's a great answer. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Lightning round.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, how do you think you've improved as a dad over the last few years?
I think maybe some of the major improvements are just making these plans where, like I said, the special work day, the special story night, where I'm building into my schedule things that don't just like, oh, we'll read if we can, but like, no, Monday night is Josephine's night. Tuesday night is Roberta's night, And so I guess these kind of traditions that we're creating, I think really help make things actually happen,
Very
so,
cool.
I think that's been important and like an important improvement recently.
Let's keep jumping. We'll go.
Okay,
right
sure.
Yeah. If you were going to write a book about your life as a professional farmer, professional parent, what are a couple of the two or three of the chapter titles maybe?
Yeah, I would say maybe one would be integration. And by that I mean like whatever ways you can in your life, trying to bring all the different parts of your life together. Yeah. So normally, work's over here, school's over here, extended family's over here, children over here, education's over here. And I feel like I'm really happy with the aspects of my life to the extent that they are into like coming together, and that like work and kids and education and family and extended family are all overlapping. You want more chapter titles?
Give me one more. How about, here you go, I'll put you on the spot. How about one when you first had your kid? Whatever that chapter was between school, work, and kid. First kid.
Yeah.
What's that chapter of life called?
Between school, work, and kid? You mean when we had our first with Josephine? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. It was so much fun, and we took ourselves so seriously. And we did so many things that we laugh at now. I would maybe just say fun and early mistakes.
Love it. I love it. All right. So generally, for the sweeping population of fathers, what do you think is the role of a father to their children?
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of different things, but the thing that comes to mind would be someone that their children is really proud of. Someone that they can just be like, my dad is a good guy, and like, for whatever else he is, like he really tries hard to do the right thing and to be good to people. So I think like as a moral example, and then with that, like I feel like if everyone had a dad that was like someone that they were just proud of because of how good a guy he was, and he was that kid's cheerleader, like the world would just be like a different place.
Okay. A physical gift. If you could gift to every father on the planet a physical gift, what would you give them?
Oh, man. Let's see here.
Big or small?
The ability to read bedtime stories late at night without falling asleep.
I like it. Okay. So, what are 3 qualities that a super dad has?
Okay. I would say one would be that they are, good and virtuous themselves as like a starting point. I'm kind of a broken record here. And then
Consistent, as we talked about.
and then the other I would say is humble and willing to ask for forgiveness. And the other I would say a close listener.
Great.
So, I think if a kid doesn't feel like they're actually being heard, even if their dad's a really good guy and in other qualities, that breaks down a relationship, right? Like you can't have connection if like just missing each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you watch much TV, but is there a dad on TV that you grew up liking or one that you like now?
Let me think about that. Yeah, I can't think of anyone. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this will be my last lightning round question.
Okay.
But I do want to give you one long answer shortly
sure.
because it's near and dear to both of us.
Yeah.
But the last lightning round question is one that I borrowed from Tim Ferriss that I have to give him credit for.
Okay.
He's a podcaster among many other things. But if you had a billboard on which you could put a message to every parent, every father, limited to that billboard, and they'd drive by it every day, what message might you put on that billboard?
Yeah. How long of a message can it be?
It's gotta be legible at 75 miles an hour.
Okay, yeah. Let's see here. I would say, since it has to be short and sweet, I would say be with your kid.
Love it. That's
Yeah.
great. One that Ike Broadus said is just different than yours.
Yeah.
It says go home. But be with your kid. I love it.
Yeah.
So we're going to call that a wrap, but I want to say a bonus question.
Sure.
That's not necessarily parent related, but I think it is because it's a part of what we do every day. Talk to me about food
Yeah.
and what you feed your kids.
Sure.
Let's have that conversation.
Do you want me to like run through the meal plan kind of thing, or?
Well, I mean, in terms of the quality of
Yeah.
food, because you and I are indoctrinated in eating things that are organic, eating
Yeah.
things that are local, and trying to do the very best we can. Whereas, the average population doesn't know that there's added sugar in milk.
Right. Yeah.
So the importance of food, just in general
Yeah.
life, as a farmer, you get this modest platform to say, this is what's wrong with food.
Yeah.
This is what should be happening.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. I guess the starting point, food is so fundamental to human flourishing. It's something we do 3 times a day, and if we don't, we're not going to be around for very long.
Yeah.
So I would just say that, you can go look at studies and you look at the breakdown of an egg that came from a hen that was raised in confinement, never saw pasture, had regular antibiotics and genetically modified feed, and you can compare that to a hen's egg that's raised on pasture and non-GMO feed and no chemicals and no antibiotics, and it bears out. It's a different food. So like if you want to go there, we can. But I also say we don't need to. Common sense tells you that an animal that's raised in an unsanitary environment that's stressful and that basically only can live if it's propped up on antibiotics is not going to give you food that makes you healthy. So, I feel like common sense just tells you what you need to know here. So I think, how mind and body are connected, I think I'm sure that we don't know the extent to which all these things are connected. So, when we talk about a person's health, you could be talking about cancer or depression or all these things. I think it would be hard to say that, your diet and what you put into your body doesn't have an effect on those things. I think that would just be kind of like a silly thing to say. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Because, of course, your environment, how active you are, what kind of air you're breathing, all these things all do. But if you think about it, this food is so intimate with your body. You're putting it inside of your body, and it's becoming part of your body. That, like, of all the environmental things that you're exposed to, this is the most intimate thing, and you're actually putting it inside of you. So of all the things that we maybe would be the most careful with and most vigilant with, that would affect all aspects of our human health, food would be like top of the list. So I think, it bears, that kind of vigilance. So yeah, and then I think the other thing that's just part of this problem is that you have a combination of human nature, which when it can will oftentimes take shortcuts, and it takes shortcuts when it's not held accountable. And it's not held accountable when it can't be seen, when it's not transparent. So I just think that it would be naive of us to think that if we hide away food production where very few people can see it, with human nature as it is, it wouldn't be so tempted to cut corners without that accountability. That I think it's just naive. So I really believe that small local farms really are the answer to that transparency problem, where you actually, as an eater, can come to our farm, walk around, see our animals, see our feed. Everything is exposed. There's nothing to hide. And so I'm human. I could have temptations to cut corners. And I'm really grateful for the fact for our transparency, because it helps me. You know what? I really don't want to move the hens to fresh pasture right now. I'll just let them muck around in that mud. No, that's going to look really bad. I'm going to move them to fresh pasture. So I'm grateful for that it helps me do the right thing. So I think just it's a systemic issue where we don't want the most important thing for human flourishing to be hidden, because we know enough about human nature to know that hidden things are a temptation for humans to cut corners. So that's why, I think like industrial organic is not the solution to the problem. I mean, we already know the industrial organic label is compromised, and there's all kinds of slimy things that are going on where what the eater thinks they're getting is not what they're getting. And so I think really it comes down to embedded local small family farms that people can have as much of a relationship with as possible, whether that can be that accountability, and that's kind of the negative way to put it. The positive way to put it would be that I have a relationship with the people I'm feeding. Yeah. And do I really want to like look them in the eye and see their sick kid and know like, oh man, well, maybe that's because of the chemicals I'm putting on the food, whatever it is, right. I care about our customers. These aren't like abstract things that are off shipped away in the distance. So there's that as well.
Yeah, that's perfect. So is there any, for the average population, what would you recommend to them, and as far as exposing them or educating them, maybe in a book or a website or a documentary or a show, that they might dip their foot into understanding what's available to eat and what they're actually eating, and contrasting those things and helping them make better decisions?
Yeah, I would say some of the more popular ways in which that information is out there would be Michael Pollan. Has written a number of books sort of as both expose of the industrial food system as well as sort of a champion of local sustainable pasture-based farming. And then the movie Food Inc. is a very well-known documentary that does kind of the same thing.
Joel is hilarious to listen to.
Yeah. So Joel Salatin is a champion of that. Another person that I really respect a lot is Wendell Berry, who writes about these issues in a really compelling way, both in fiction and poetry and essays. So yeah, I think those would all be good sources. Yeah.
And let's plug Whiffletree real quick.
Okay.
Your website, contact.
Sure. So our website is whiffletreefarmva.com. Whiffletree is WHIFFLETREE farmva.com. And, you can check us out on Facebook, and you're welcome to, all my contact information is on the website. So you can call me, text me, email me, and come out and bring your kids and come see the animals and walk around. The wintertime's not as much fun as the spring or
sure.
fall, but yeah, like I said, everyone's welcome to come out and see the animals.
How about some spots that carry your food or restaurants locally here in Fauquier or Warrenton?
Yeah, we work with a number of restaurants here, Claire's and Black Bear and the Ashby Inn. So there's other restaurants, but those are some of the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's call it.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler.